Welcome everyone for tuning in. We are so excited to host you here. Get your pen, your paper, your notes out. It's going to be a mouthful of wonderful astrology. I'm Esoteric Essa, Bruja astrologer, psychic tarot reader, and so many more things. And I'm here with my beautiful amiga Mari, who is a Vedic astrologer. I'm a tropical astrologer. She's a seer. She is a psychic. She's an intuitive. She's based out of Arizona. But Mari, I'm going to throw it over to you to give our folks who are new here just a better understanding of who you are. So tell us.
Hi, everyone. For those that don't already follow me, my name is Mari. My page and my system is called Vedic Astrology, but my page is actually called ILLEST Divinity. So make sure you go follow and, support your girl. But I'm a Vedic astrologer. I started off first as a Western astrologer, and years later, I made the move over to Vedic. Both systems are amazing. I am, like I said, versed in both, but today we're going to be focusing for me on Vedic, and then Jasmine's going to focus on the Western, which I love. We're going to touch on the differences actually of both systems, just so that whoever's watching can understand a little bit about what both systems are and why they're different. So I'm going to touch on Vedic. For Vedic astrology, our system is based off of the constellations. And so our system is based on the stars. So it is a very star-based system. With Western, I'll let Jasmine, talk about that, but I know it's more solar-based. So I'll let you go.
Yes. So we're just touching on briefly the differences, right? I am a Western tropical astrologer, and we're going to get into the forecasting of October and the rest of this year because it's a big year. And tropical Western astrology, which is the one you see most oftenly referred to in pop culture, mainstream media in the United States of America, you are absolutely right, sis. It operates off of the 4 seasons. So particularly the solstices and the equinoxes. And that is the difference. I know that Vedic operates off of I only know this because I teach a master class. I'm not trying to be, Miss Fact Base over here, but there is a 24-degree difference between the signs. So if you are, for example, I'm a natal Aquarius sun sign. In Vedic, I would be a Capricorn sun sign. I don't subscribe to that. I love being an Aquarius, but so that's what we mean by there's always a shift in signs. There's going to be a major difference, which is why we're doing this video, because you're going to see for the rest of this year, as we go into the eclipses and the retrograde for Mercury at the end of the year, from Mari's point of view, and then from tropical, how they're going to bring cool topics of discussions and how we'll see that align. Okay, so sis, take us into our first topic at hand. What are we going to get into? Tell us.
So the first thing we're going to talk about are the eclipses. And because that's really the hot topic for the month of October. And really, it's going to be what we're going to be dealing with over the course of the next 6 to 9 months approximately. Before we get into that, let's talk about the differences between solar and lunar eclipses. So for me, I view solar eclipses as impacting our outer world, because the sun is what we see. And when the sun gets eclipsed, there's certain things in our life that get impacted. And it's very much like a more tangible way of knowing. Lunar eclipses are a lot of like internal shifts occur. And that's the way I view it. However, obviously, lunar eclipses, when there is an internal shift, then there is a reflection to our outer reality as well. So that's how we end up seeing what actually happens in our real life. But solar eclipses are very much like, I don't know, I'm going to give an example. Like, say you have a solar eclipse in your 10th house, maybe you're about to switch your career and you really didn't have a say at what happened, but your job literally laid you off. Now you have to shift your career. That's not something you can really manage. But when there is a lunar eclipse in your 10th house, that's you internally feeling like you need a change in career. You're wanting to change it. You start looking, you start simmering in that energy, and then you start making those changes. So that's my example of like the difference between the two.
So beautiful. I love that. Very poetic. Absolutely. I would agree, on par with that. Like you said, eclipses definitely take, in tropical astrology, we give them at least a 6-month cycle to manifest. And what we were saying offline, you and I, is like sometimes it's going to happen the day of, depending on your personal planets in your chart, if they're aspecting the eclipses. But yes, solar eclipses are definitely, in my humble opinion, a lot more transformative than the lunar eclipses. People tend to give lunar eclipses a bad rep, like they're scared of them the most, because when we think of lunar, we think of full moon and like, oh man, everything's gonna fall apart. But in reality, it's the solar, because like you said, it's the external. Whereas lunar is something more in your inner world, because right, we think of the moon, that is our inner perspective, whereas the sun gives light to the external environment, how we navigate such. So just think of both eclipses. Solar is like a new moon on steroids, I love to say that, and then lunar is like a full moon on steroids as well. Is there anything else you want to add to maybe like some 101 basics of the solar and the lunar for newbies who might be watching, who want to comprehend it a little bit more?
What you can expect when lunar eclipses, and I made this observation time and time again, is that solar eclipses give you a lot of anxiety, like because the sun really, it shakes you up, and the sun makes you feel good. But when there's something going on with the sun and there's a not confliction, but there's a covering of the sun, it throws off the anxiety inside of people. So I do know, though, that again, that's because you are sensing already shifts and changes happening. With lunar eclipses, there's more emotions. Like you're gonna be on like your bed crying, not necessarily all the time. Keep in mind, everybody has 12 houses. So wherever the eclipses are happening, it's going to make a difference as to how you're feeling versus your homegirl. You know what I mean? And it's going to be different. It's also going to impact if you have a specific planet like the moon or the sun or Venus hitting the exact point of where these eclipses are happening, because then that's going to affect that part of your life as well, even more so.
Yes, the last thing I will add to that, Mari, I love to tell my Patreon and my students, like, when it comes to eclipses, like that, with all due respect, adult disclaimer again, everything in this video, please, adult disclaimer. You are responsible for your own decisions you make in life, okay? This is not to fearmonger. Astrology and spirituality is not just love and light, baby. Like we gotta talk about the hammer when the hammer drops, okay? But I like to say eclipses, and you might agree with this, really govern free will. We have free will to a certain extent. Right? The eclipses, like you were saying, is the will of what?
Karma.
Yes.
They get the wheels turning of our karma, and whatever our destiny is supposed to be here on this earth, eclipses is what's going to trigger that destiny to happen. Whether it's the day of the eclipse, the week of the eclipse, or 6 months later, you better believe those eclipses are changing your life. When one way or another.
Yes. And like what we both know here, and we want to emphasize with you listening, is eclipses definitely help steer the discourse in the collective humanity, the soul patterns and the ascension of the things that we need to address for human consciousness. So that's why we'll see a lot of themes come up in the year that align with Scorpio eclipse themes, Taurus eclipse themes, Aries eclipse themes, So anything else you want to add to that, sis, before we jump into what's next?
No, I mean, we've covered that. I mean, I hope that people that are watching have followed the eclipse cycles. But if this is your first time, start paying attention to how the eclipses affect you. Now, also, I do want to add that the eclipses that we're having now happen every 18 years. So if you want to kind of get a little idea of what's going to be happening this eclipse cycle, think back 18 years. Because that's when the same set of eclipses were happening. And so that's another little thing there that I want to throw in.
That's why it's so great to have journals and diaries. You know? Right?
Yeah,
adult diaries. Sure. Let's emphasize. Let's start campaigning. Let's bring back adult diaries, please. All right. Okay, sis. So what is the first eclipse we're going to talk about?
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to briefly talk about past eclipses, just to give you guys an idea of what happened, predictions that we've both made that, happened. For example, for me, with Vedic astrology, As I mentioned earlier, we base it off of the constellations. And behind the constellations, we have what we call nakshatras. Nakshatras are the lunar mansions. So I do a lot of work with the nakshatras, and that's where I base my predictions off of. One specific prediction, and because last eclipse cycle we had nakshatras in the sign of Swati, or in the nakshatra of Swati, which is all about technology, innovation. I did say, and it also rules whistleblowing. So I mentioned there is going to be whistleblowers related to space, alien life. And what happened in June? We had David Grush come out as the UFO whistleblower. He presented in front of Congress in the month of July. That did occur. I also mentioned there was going to be shifts in entertainment. And what happened? The writer and the actor strike occurred in Hollywood. So there was a lot of changes when it came to that. I also mentioned that because of the eclipses where they were happening, that women's reproductive rights were going to be a hot topic, and they've been doing that for the last year and a half. So I just wanted to mention that. And that's how you can see these big events that occur in the world really do come down to eclipses.
Absolutely. From a Western tropical standpoint, one of the big things that I was really emphasizing that we were in alignment with is, because of Taurus, obviously, Scorpios is genitalia, Taurus is the Empress, femininity, our bodies. Scorpio is power and domination, right? Wanting to control the Empress archetype, right? Our feminine expression. But also what's really interesting, I think we're going to see more of this because Taurus also rules land and agriculture and labor. And then we're going to get into it later, but Virgo's coming up, right? We also have the strike with hotel workers. And I think that's going to be a big thing where labor workers, union workers, agriculture workers, our beautiful immigrant family who are up north in California doing all this work on produce and tending to the land and agriculture, are gonna get their justice, or at least because the Libra eclipse is going to help us try and renegotiate conversations, which is what we saw with writer strike. Entertainment, again, there's a lot of renegotiating with AI. That was a big thing, right? With the technology and with actors. They're like, wait a minute, you want to own my intellectual property through AI? Like, that's absolutely not right. So that's why we're seeing this long dragged out process of keep renegotiating, and how funny that we're looking to hopefully wrap this up by October when these two eclipses are coming in. So come in, tell me.
Yes, so these new eclipses, so another thing that I wanted to mention is that eclipses come in pairs. Obviously, we already talked about the two, solar and lunar, but they happen every 6 months. So 6 months ago, we had the eclipses. For Vedic astrology, one of those eclipses happened in the same sign that it's going to be happening again now. And it's what you said. It started then, the strike, and that was the solar eclipse. And what did I say about solar eclipses? That you could see what was going to be happening. And the lunar eclipses is like a wrapping up, like a finishing, a culmination of it, which now we're having the lunar eclipse in that same nakshatra, which is Ashwini. And that hits the country's 5th house of entertainment. And that is why this strike is now wrapping up.
And thankfully so. This has affected people across the board. I have clients who are costume designers, makeup artists. Like, this has affected a lot of people in the industry, not just writers, right? And God bless our writers. They deserve to be fairly compensated, right? Like, they deserve that. And we're going to see a revolution of writers. I don't want to get too far ahead, but once Uranus shifts into Gemini in the next 2 years, we're going to see more of an emphasis on storytelling and writing. But you talked about the entertainment. I know we're not going to talk too much about Venus and Leo, but she definitely added to that. But going back to the Taurus eclipse, like you said, we are wrapping up from a tropical standpoint over the last 2 years, right? The last 2 years we've had the eclipses in Scorpio and Taurus through the start of the pandemic. And it's been rough. I'm going to be honest. Scorpio and Taurus eclipse axis, because they're sister signs. That's what we mean. They happen in pairs on the sister sign, the eclipse axis, right? They're across from each other on the wheel. Thankfully, we're going to have a break and we'll go back into Scorpio and Taurus eclipses in 2032. How interesting that we're wrapping them up in 2023. And then we revisit in 2032. So a little bit of numerology there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's true. I love that. For this set of eclipses, the first eclipse happens on October 14th. That's going to be the solar eclipse. That one is going to occur first. But for Vedic astrology, yes, usually the eclipses do happen on opposite signs, especially like, for example, if you're a Cancer, you're going to have the opposite sign as Capricorn, vice versa, and throughout the entire zodiac wheel. But for this set of eclipses, it's our transition eclipse. Our eclipse, the first one is actually going to happen in the sign of Virgo, and then the second one will be in Aries. So it's going to be that transition because our nodes, which we call Rahu and Ketu, are going to be shifting towards the before the end of the year. And then going forward, then yes, we're going to be having the eclipses in Virgo and in Pisces. And it'll be like that for the next year and a half. But this set of eclipses, there's a transition here. Like we're wrapping up the old cycle, and now we're going into the new. And that's basically what's going to be happening. So the first one, October 14th, in the sign of Virgo, in the nakshatra of Chitra, which we love, because Esta is a Chitra native. Beautiful, bright star here. Actually, that's the name of this nakshatra is called the brightest star. So I predict that with this specific eclipse, there is going to be a triggering in the financial markets, which I know, Jasmine, you've talked about this in length in one of your podcasts. And this eclipse is going to trigger because it's happening in the 10th house of the country, but it's also aspecting so many of the houses related to the money. It's just aspecting the second house. It's actually conjunct the planet Saturn, which rules the second house of the country, which is the financial markets. I'm also seeing that there is going to be some sort of rebellion amongst people who are seeing the scales of power not being quite what they need to be. And so I feel there's going to be like, I said the word rebellion, that may be a little far-fetched, but I do see more protest in regards to the way the economy is going. I'm also seeing shifts in religion, and I know that I feel like that with the sign of Chitra, because with Virgo specifically, and the opposite sign being Pisces, there's a very deep religious aspect to those two signs. It's like, I feel that this is the beginning of some sort of like religious change in the world, maybe new religions or a shift in beliefs within religion. Chitra is a very inventive and very smart nakshatra. So I'm also seeing inventions, but because it's ruled by the planet Mars, I'm seeing that there could be inventions in weapons as well, like some sort of like weapons of war, or stuff like that. Space weapons too.
My mind's all
and Chitra rules leaders because again it's considered the brightest star, so a lot of people with Chitra tend to become leaders in life. And so I do see a rise in new leadership around the world, political and religious. So that's what I'm seeing for the first eclipse. What about you? That's a lot,
man. No, and you were like download. Yeah. You synced up with all my downloads. Yes, because first and foremost, Spica, which in tropical astrology is going to be, so fixed star, the star is Spica in Libra, is going to be conjunct, meaning sitting side by side very closely to this solar eclipse in Libra at 21 degrees. Spica, though, sis, is in the constellation of Virgo. So she's bringing in that Virgo energy. Some two big key players, and it's funny that they both have the same first name, that I think we need to keep our eyes on are Bill Clinton, who's about to be exposed, and Bill Gates, because Bill Gates, just really quickly, back in I think it was 2010, he invested about $23 million in Monsanto, which is a GMO seeding company, but then he ended up selling the shares because he got a lot of backlash. But I think there's something, because Virgo's harvest, it's land again, right? There's something with land in our food that we're going to see come up again, where people are going to again bring up this rise, demanding of like, wait a minute, like, why are we being I gotta watch how I say this. Our food, like, first and foremost, our nutrition, like, it's why are we being, for lack of a better word, poisoned in a way through our food, right? Let's just call it what it is. So the solar eclipse, you mentioned a rebellion. I feel that so much, because Pluto and Mars are square and Pluto is square the transiting nodes. Talk about the money shifting, the economy shifting, maybe a possible crash. I mean, the United States is having a nodal return, a reverse nodal return. The fact that we have 2 eclipses in the month of October that are Venus ruled, we are shifting the way we generate Venusian energy, the way we see it, right? Venus isn't, you and I have talked about this before. Venus isn't this, you know, lovey-dovey, butterflies and roses, you know, save me archetype. She will get her vengeance. She will,
if you know, you know.
If you know,
exactly.
you know. Venus says, you are not a girl, you are a sword. Lay out the sword, okay? So we are going to see, like you said, a balancing of the scales. There could be definitely big businesses, global corporations who are going to have to eat their words and who are going to really have to put their money where their mouth is, because the public is going to demand, right? Libra is public. It is the court of public opinion, and going to demand that we change this true narrative to bring justice to all the communities who are being underserved. So what are your thoughts on that, or anything else you want to add to that?
I love that. I love that because you mentioned the sign of, well, obviously for you guys, it's happening in the sign of Libra. For me, when I see this, I see that eclipse happening. It's happening in the 10th house of the country. It's actually exactly aspecting the sun of the country, which is in the 7th house. And the 7th house has that Libra energy, even though it's a sign of Gemini. It still has Libra energy. So it's, what is the 7th house? The 7th house is the people. It's like an uprising of the people, because there's a sick and tired energy out here, and I feel that there is going to be something coming about, you know, when it comes
and by then, you know, we talked about this deserves its own breakout video, but y'all, by then Pluto will be direct on 10/10, angel number, October 10th. Pluto will be direct in Capricorn for one final go round of the patriarchy to say, let's get this ish right. Let's lay down the hammer, because we're moving into Pluto and Aquarius. Everybody's getting innovative. Everyone's getting futuristic, right? So it's like we're releasing old karmic timelines through the patriarchal lens, and we're shifting into, I think everyone's tapping into it. Our elders, our parents, right? Everyone's feeling that Aquarius energy, right? So it's like one final go around. The rest of this year is going to be a really big year for us in the United States, but also we're seeing, I could see this play abroad in different countries, right?
For sure. Yeah, I feel that the power dynamics of this country are going to be shifting for sure. For Western, Pluto is in Capricorn, but going to be going back into Aquarius. For Vedic, it's now in Capricorn. So Pluto, Capricorn. So for the next, and you know, Pluto moves so slow. It's like 18 to like 24. I mean, it's always going to be different, but about a 20-year stay in one sign, it's going to be impacting this country, the way we do life, and even I'm feeling like the Constitution, because Pluto is power. And when we birthed this country on July 4th, 1771, I think.
I think you're right.
1771. It is. I feel like there's astrologers behind that date, because this country has a powerful chart. But Pluto going over the natal Pluto of the country is like dismantling a lot of things.
It's old power for sure. Old power. And we're shifting that, right? Because Pluto moving into Aquarius is about community, right? Aquarius energy loves to be an individual. It's very individualistic, but it's about what can I contribute to the village as an individual. It's not just self-serving, you know? So we're going to see that abroad. The last thing I want to say is, with 2 Venus eclipses in tropical astrology, and tell me your insights, happening back to back in the month of October, you know, this is why we're bringing up money and finances, because Venus rules money, Venus rules finances. And, you know, money is energy, it's transient. And Venus is telling us we're shifting, especially with Spica, because that's the fixed star of wealth. We're redistributing wealth, not just financially, but wealth of life. Wealth of quality of life, wealth of quality food, to have quality living, quality health, quality wages. That's what we're shifting, so people can have a decent human experience that is our birthright.
Exactly. And you mentioned the quality of life, the food, the nutrition. Virgo, well, because we're having the eclipses in
Yeah.
Virgo,
Say it.
definitely is related to health. It's
Mm-hmm.
related to medicines. It's related to what we're being given, drugs. It's
Mm-hmm.
poisons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Mm.
definitely shifting a lot of that.
Woo! Woo! Man, I feel it. I feel it. It just feels so powerful, and it's so beautiful because you could feel the collective consciousness like tapping into this with their higher selves, right?
Absolutely.
And we're gonna create powerful, productive movements together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's get into the lunar eclipse,
Let's talk
because
about it.
that happens on the 28th, depending
Yes.
on where you're at, 28th, 29th of
Mm-hmm.
October. For Vedic astrology, that's happening in the sign of Aries, which is the 5th house of the country, and it is happening in the nakshatra of Ashwini, and the sun will be opposite that, which is in the sun in the nakshatra of Swati. So my predictions for that specific eclipse is that because that eclipse is actually conjuncting Jupiter, which is in the it's not tightly conjunct. I like to see my conjunctions like 1 or 2 degrees. It's about 4 degrees apart, but
it's still at play
be,
though. Yeah.
it's still at play with Jupiter, and that's in the nakshatra of Prani, which is all about women reproductive rights. So I don't think that's over. Like, the topic with women's rights is not over. Due to these eclipses, I do see a combination when it comes to women's rights that's going to be making headlines. I'm also seeing children and their safety being discussed on the political stage. A lot of things with children. Mental health as well, because Ashwini is the head, and so is the sign of Aries. So a lot of mental health focus for people, and they're going to be wanting to get better with their mental health. Personally, I started going to therapy just a few months ago, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I recommend it for everyone. There is no shame in that. There needs to be like a deconstruction of whatever like you thought mental health was. It's actually amazing for people. Everyone should do it. There's going to be new innovative therapies that can be created because of this, because Ashwini is a healing nakshatra as well, and it's also very innovative. The whole whistleblowing and the UFO stuff is not over. Again, the sun is Swati, because Swati is related to outer space, and so I do feel there's going to be more of that kind of stuff coming out. And we already talked about this, but the entertainment industry going through those changes now, it's like coming around. But there is, because Ashwini is related to technology, AI, Chat GPT. There's so much that's going to be continuing to develop.
Oh, yeah, we haven't even seen the beginning.
No,
right?
It's just the beginning.
Just the tip. Yo, the aliens are invited to the carne asada, okay?
For real.
Come through. My salsa's bomb, okay? No, but sis, I feel you on a lot of that.
Yeah.
Also, what's really interesting is, I think from a climate crisis perspective with that eclipse in Taurus, so in Western astrology, tropical, it's going to be happening in Taurus at 5 degrees on October 28th. I think we're going to see another huge discussion, at least, abroad with the United Nations and everyone who's involved in trying to advocate for the climate crisis. We're going to see another spark of bringing that up to the forefront, because Taurus is Pachamama, essentially, right? She is. And I think it's interesting that from a numerology perspective, October 28th, 2 plus 8 is a 10. October is a 10. We have another 1010 numerology code that I feel somehow is, I don't know exactly how yet. Tell me what you're channeling, if you're channeling anything, Muddy. Pluto goes direct on October 10th. I feel there's a very direct connection there somehow. Don't know what it is. What are you feeling? Because you were like, oh, yeah, that feels like, you're like, that feels like something.
I love that you brought in numerology, because this year we're in the number 7, universal year. And 7 is all about our inner world, our introspection, and 10 is the ending and the beginning. So this has been an entire year of us going and doing a lot of that internal work. Therapy, for example, I just mentioned I started going to therapy. It's been amazing.
Hell yeah.
But a lot of people are coming to that culmination with this eclipse. Remember what I said about lunar eclipses? It's an internal shift as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Ooh,
yeah.
you're right. And then just going back to therapy, because I'm in therapy too. This is like a
Hey,
plug for therapy. Um,
yeah.
Sponsored by
Somebody sponsor us.
No, but then Pluto, right? The ending and the transformation, the transformative, evolution, right? In Capricorn, patriarchy, as Latinos, Latinas, we grew up in patriarchal, authoritative households, right?
Yeah.
Mental health was shamed. Why? Because it was a way of silencing our voices.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so we're reclaiming all that. So just going into that number of the 10, right? It's the Ouroboros. It's the snake eating its own tail. We're going in these.
I love that.
Can we go get that tatted together, you and
I
I?
know. I
Sisterhood
love
tats.
that.
But okay, just a couple more things on that Taurus eclipse, because you mentioned Jupiter in Taurus. I do personally think that the housing market, the rates are going to continue being high for housing. That's because Jupiter, it expands, right? It expands. Yeah. Jupiter loves to overdo things. God bless Jupiter. Jupiter's like, we're going to have a ball, It's like, okay, tone it down a bit, But in Taurus, because Taurus is also land, I think this is an important time where we're also going to see another movement with land back, with indigenous peoples across the globe wanting to reclaim, right? Wanting to reclaim what righteously has been stolen from them. I think we're going to see that as a big topic. Inflation in the housing market is going to continue, staying there. Also, the automobile crisis. We're seeing a strike among automobile workers with, I think it's Ford, with Chrysler, and I can't remember the third one. So I do think that's also going to inflate recession for the economy in the United States. And automobile ties into Sagittarius, which we're going to get into Mercury Retrograde happening in Sag next. But the last thing I'll say with the Taurus lunar eclipse, yes, we are going to have a revisit with women's rights, reproductive rights, LGBTQ plus, which you and I were talking about, right? You were bringing up our trans community.
Yes.
And that is a big topic. We're going to see presidential nominees, at least from the Democratic ballot, try and use as leverage to position their campaigns to bring back, okay, this is what we're doing for DACA. This is what we're going to promise for, women's rights. So that's going to be their ticket into getting the buy-in. We're seeing from the Republican Party, that is their ticket to get the buy-in in opposing those, right? Those very Aquarian, liberative, discussions. So it's interesting how we're seeing, the ice versus the fire in those areas. And I think it's by the end of this year, because we're getting into 2024, which is the next presidential campaign in the United States, I think we're going to see a blow up in those discussions. Did you want to add to that? Anything?
I love that you mentioned about the automobile, because I had no idea that was even happening, to be honest with you. I don't even watch the news. I don't, but I love that because Ashwini is actually the twin horses. And so Ashwini, the nakshatra that is happening, and it's the twin horses and that are running. It always ties in. And so that's amazing because definitely Ashwini is ruling transportation. So whether it's like flight or cars or train type of transportation, there's going to be obviously you just mentioned it, something related to the automobile crisis. That makes a lot of sense. I didn't even know that was happening.
Yeah. Well, my dad's a Sag and he works in transportation. So he keeps me up to date on all that,
Okay.
Like, damn, thanks, Pops. Right.
Yeah.
Write my notes.
I love that.
So sis, what's next as we start wrapping up this video?
So we talked about both of the eclipses. Yeah, I did want to briefly talk about Rahu and Ketu, which is the North Node and the South Node, switching signs for Vedic astrology. So I mentioned this a little bit ago, but Rahu, which is the North Node, and Ketu, which is the South Node, are going to be switching signs into Virgo and Pisces. I do feel that this is giving us a very psychedelic revolution and holistic healing, new beginning. There is going to be a lot of new spiritual, creative imagination type of energy with the Pisces, because Rahu, which is the head of the serpent, is going into Pisces. And Pisces is very mystical, very spiritual, but it could also be very elusive and very detached and escapism, which a lot of that could be drugs, a lot of that could be
Yes.
psychedelics,
Plant medicine.
yeah, plant medicine.
Abuse
And
of that.
K2, right, and then K2 going into Virgo is, well, first of all, Virgo is very precise, very analytical, very practical, but
Right.
K2 is the tail of the snake, which is doesn't think. It just, it's an instinct type of thing.
See.
And so it's kind of taking away our ability to, not necessarily, our ability to look at details and to focus on the details. So, but it's giving us our capacity to see the bigger picture versus just like focus and concentrate on the little details. Sometimes it's good to take a step back so we could see the forest for the trees. And that's that type of energy.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah,
I know
that's
you
really
want
important.
You mentioned Mercury also, which
yes.
Mercury at the end of the year.
We have one more Mercury retrograde, y'all.
Yeah, just one more. It's gonna be impactful. I usually don't say that about Mercury retrogrades. I always just say, you know, back up your laptop, you know, make sure you watch your mouth, watch your mouth.
Watch your mouth.
Yeah. Watch your driving. You know, there's like more accidents usually when Mercury is retrograde because people aren't paying attention because Mercury is the mind and the way we act and our emotions. But it's going retrograde December 13th. It's not going direct until January 1st. For us, it's happening in Sagittarius, backing up into the sign of Scorpio, which is hitting that galactic point, which is why I say I feel this one's going to be very karmic because that galactic point is considered Gandanta, and Gandanta is the karmic not being undone. So Mercury going there, there's definitely something about communication coming about that's very karmic, even awareness or some knowledge that you gain during that time. That's what I have to say about that one.
Yeah, I feel like from a collective perspective, because for tropic, it's happening in different signs, but just to touch on what you said real quick, from a collective perspective, with it going back into Scorpio, it could be like information revealed that makes, us lose trust, creates distrust, I think, in a public capacity, maybe some like really important information of what's been hidden from us, from the government or from officials, from people in authority. Because remember, we just wrapped up Venus retrograde, which happens every 18 months. And in Mayan cosmology, Venus, when Venus retrograde happens, it makes people in positions of power go under review. And if you weren't acting right, your ass gets served. And so we're seeing that play out until the end of this year, I think, especially from Vedic perspective. And then I think more people coming into power with their ancestral connections. I think we're going to see, just from a spiritual community perspective, a lot of people just, again, doing another round of reclaiming their spiritual identity, their indigenous practices from their ancestry, especially in the Latin and the indigenous communities. But Mercury retrograde, from tropical perspective, on December 13th is starting at 8 degrees of Capricorn and will enter Sagittarius on December 23rd, right before Christmas, and will go direct in Sagittarius at 22 degrees on January 1st también. And I think it's interesting, numerology, because you and I love it. I think it's interesting that it's going direct. Forget the sign. It's happening at 22 degrees, master number, which Sagittarius is the true visionary. Sagittarius is the visionary, right? It is the Hierophant. It is being able to see from higher realms, Jupiter, right? Jupiter vision. And with the master number 22 at play, I think we're going to, again, have a lot of beautiful inspiration around rebuilding, right? Because 22 is the 4 vibration. So creating new foundations for the future, and a lot of innovations. I think people are going to come forward with new ideas. I think particularly it's going to affect travel, airlines, cruise lines, definitely the world economy, definitely business corporations, big like Fortune 500 businesses are going to be a topic of discussion. But my eyes are on China globally. I think there is a lot that we're going to see where China is going to start falling apart from their economy. And I think China is going to be a big discussion in some sort of capacity by the end of this year into next year. That's going to influence us because China has a huge influence in global economy, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts?
I have not looked at the Chinese charts, the China's charts. I have not.
I haven't looked at their chart either.
But you're right, because Mercury going back into Scorpio is an unveiling of some sort of secrecy that had
Mm.
been hidden from us. And again,
Ooh.
because of the Gandanta point, that is a very karmic
Mm.
information that it's going to come to light. And I do
Oh
feel that
my God.
it's going to be
Yeah.
impacting the world,
Oh my
because it's not just
God.
affecting the US, but the world.
Girl, and it's happening to Scorpio. And when did the pandemic happen? When the nodes were in Scorpio and Taurus. Could it be a revisit of information about COVID-19? I
Oh,
don't
it could be.
know. Mm.
I have to literally pull up that chart because I
Mm.
haven't done it. We'll have to
Mm.
bring that back.
I just know because globally a lot of obviously companies have pulled out from China, right? They're trying to do domestic. The automobile is forcing domestic makers, right, in order to go EV. Like there's a lot of push to bring things back domestically into the States to bring economy back in. And I know that currently China, based off of what I've seen online, is not faring too well with their agriculture. They're having a lot of flooding. So again, it's just, I think there is a lot with the Taurus. So we got to look at China's chart. What's happening in the chart in Taurus? What's happening in the chart in Sagittarius, particularly because I do have a strong intuitive hunch that by the end of this year, China is going to be a hot topic for us. We'll
That's
see.
awesome. Well, not awesome, but maybe awesome, depending on where your views
Maybe,
are.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's always a pro and a con, they say.
Yeah, for sure.
So, sis, is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
Um, no, I mean, that is definitely, the eclipses are really going to be the heavy
Oh,
hitters,
yeah.
but
Oh,
that
yeah.
Mercury retrograde is going to be impacting us as well as
Mm,
the nodal shifts, because again,
mm.
for Western, I know that they moved right this summer
It was in April.
into,
Mm-hmm.
okay, all right, in April. For
Uh-huh.
us, it's
Earlier.
happening in November,
In
at the
November.
end of
In
November,
November. Ah, the
November 29th.
end. November
Mm-hmm.
29th. 2 plus 9, 11, and 11 portal. Look at that. So
Mm-hmm.
y'all keep an eye out on November 29th, okay?
Yeah, there's going to be big shifts
That
then as
feels
well.
big. That feels
And
big.
it
I don't know.
stays there for a year and a half. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but they will stay there till for a year and a half to 2025.
Mm. So is Saturn transiting Pisces and Vedic?
It's transiting Aquarius.
Aquarius for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Because I was
Yeah.
like, for us, Saturn's in Pisces, so I wonder how that would add play to the nodes in Pisces
Yeah.
and Virgo.
Oh, well, for the country specifically, the US chart, Saturn is going over the natal moon of the country.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And the natal moon of the country, the moon actually is the eighth house, because the eighth house of the United States, it's Cancer. So that's that very
Mm-hmm.
scorpionic energy, because the eighth house is a lot of hidden secrets. And Saturn
Mm.
going over that moon, there is going to be first of all, that's money, because eighth house is also money, other people's money,
Yes.
taxes, things that we owe other people.
Uh-huh.
But it's
Mm-hmm.
also hidden secrets.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
It's getting juicy.
It's getting juicy. I do feel the next 2 years, just in general, very broad statement here,
Mhm.
but it's going to shift a
Mhm.
lot of our life. I mean, when
Mhm.
doesn't? And we're always
Yeah.
evolving, but I really feel that there's culminations, and I haven't seen this level of energy. The last time I saw it was in 2020, when we were looking at the charts early, like in 2016, 2017. We started looking towards the future, and
Mhm.
we saw
Mhm.
2020 come around, and we were like,
Mhm.
oh wait, what is happening here? And we
Mm.
noticed it as astrologers. We saw
Uh-huh.
that coming way in advance,
Mm.
but I feel that there is more coming here now.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, there's so much we could talk about. We thank you all for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe to both of us or either one of us. Spread the love. If you want to share this video, we're more than open to seeing comments. Just keep it cute, keep it respectful. Please, zero tolerance for any sort of hate or, just bad vibes. No malejo here. Mira.
Yeah.
There you go.
No.
But Madi, it was so much fun. I have a feeling we're going to do a lot more of these just because
Yeah,
there's
it was
so much to talk
fun.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice to bounce off from one perspective versus the other. And like you said, it always matches somehow.
Always. And that was the whole point of us doing this, because you could have two very different star systems that bring validity. And they complement each other. You know, the cosmos
Yeah.
are the cosmos. And a lot of people like to say it's pseudoscience, but back in the day, astronomy and astrology were complementary to one another. So we just wanted to bring love back into the community, because especially as astrologers, it's important that we link up and unite, whether you're a whole house, a Vedic, a tropic, you know, like, let's just spread the love. We need support in this community because we already get enough bashing as it is, right?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
love the unity.
Any final words, sis, before we let them go?
No, it was so fun. Thank you so much. I can't wait to do this again. And everybody watching, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it brought you guys a lot of knowledge and something to look forward to, and for you guys to start paying attention to your own chart, because that's how personally I started learning astrology, is by seeing the transits, how they behaved in my own chart. And I, started noticing how they behaved in other people's charts. And then I started going down the rabbit hole of just studying and studying and studying. And that's really, observational astrology is the way to go. You can read a book, but it's not going to be as impactful as you observing your own chart and you observing what happens in the world based off of astrology.
Right. It is a repetitive, learned language, an art, a science, todo. Put some respect on it.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, leave us your observations in the comments as well. We're open to that. So we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.